Eldon, can you tell me about your grandparents, your mother's mother and father, where they were from?
Oh, right. So that's my grandmother.
Yeah.
Right. Well, grandmother Annie Pink was Annie. I've forgotten her name now. But she came from Wavertree in Liverpool, but had originated her family from Scotland. And I can't quite remember their name now. So it became Annie Pink.
That's okay.
Well, anyway,
Yeah.
I could give you that
Yeah.
in a letter or something. So she emanates from Wavertree. Then Frederick Pink, that's her husband, is from Wallasey.
And so your mother, her name?
Was Dorothy Pink. Dorothy Lillian Pink. She became Dorothy Lillian Worrall.
And when was your mother born?
Now that's another thing. I don't have that detail to hand. Sometime in the 1920s.
And where did she live?
When? At what stage?
When she was born?
Oh, in Wallasey. And the address was 1 Upper Rice Lane.
Do you know where she went to school?
At Liscard. Here, where we are here, the school's called Edgerton School.
And after she left school, what did she do for work?
Well, the war began when she was perhaps about 20. So in 1940, she was made to go to an ammunitions manufacturing factory. They're called munitions. But she had a very serious health problem in that they were using, I think, asbestos in making the bombs to bomb Germany with, and had a very bad effect on her health. So she was then not working anymore for the ammunitions factory, which was in Liverpool. But what she did do, she then became a secretary to a doctor, Dr Goldberg, I think his name was, a Jewish name, Dr Goldberg, who lived in New Brighton, but his practice was in Liscard.
So how did your mother meet your father?
At a ballroom called the Tower Ballroom, New Brighton. And it was called the Tower Ballroom because it had a great big tower like Blackpool Tower on top of it. And they met each other at a dance that was being held in slightly curious circumstances, where my father started to go on fire whilst he was dancing, because he had the matches in those days were made from sulphur, and if you sort of agitated or vibrated, they could explode and go up, and that's exactly what happened.
Was he hurt?
No, my mother rushed him into the gentleman's toilet, and I think she got water or something and threw it over him.
That is a great story. So what's your father's background? Where did he come from?
Oh, right.
What was his name?
Edward Theodore Worrall. And I was talking to you earlier about this house and that my grandmother owned it, and it was a little farm then, and her name was Mary Mills, but she was, so the Mills were married into the Worralls through my father, really, I suppose that's how it happened. And so he was born here in this house.
Did you mention his mother was Irish?
Yes. Yeah, the Mills family were Irish. And they bred horses, and that was their business. But his mother died, Mary Mills, giving birth to my father. So he was actually, there were quite a few other members, brothers and sisters. I think there might have been 7 altogether. But he was the youngest one, and sadly Mary Mills died giving birth to him.
Did they all live in this house?
Oh, yes, yes. It's not a very big house, but I think in those days people would put 4 children in one room.
When did they get married, your mum and dad?
Oh, 1943. I know that because I've seen the marriage certificate recently. 1943.
Was it a church ceremony or?
No, it was in the town hall, so it wasn't a religious ceremony. It was a civil marriage.
Do you remember your father having a low mood or flashback?
Yes. They would last for months at a time, and then he'd sort of get better, and then another thing would go off, and he'd be in bed really for months at a time. He wouldn't go out. Today he would be probably diagnosed as maybe post-traumatic stress disorder. I think, him having to kill people, which they did. I'm not sure how many people he killed, but certainly that was the job of all the people in the army in Afghanistan. So I guess that would have upset him.
Now, did your father become a clock repairer?
Well, he was a clock repairer and a clock dealer. So his job was finding very rare clocks, not ordinary alarm clocks or, very rare ones, 18th century and things like that. And grandfather clocks, particularly, he was very, very interested in the grandfather clock business. So people used to come and buy from him grandfather clocks, and then they would send them to America and they would make a profit. But he would make a profit on this side, but probably not as much as the exporters did.
Did he have a shop, or did people come to the house?
No, just to the house.
And was that this house?
Well, no, by that time, we're talking of post-1951, when I'm born. After that time, we were then living in a number of addresses, actually. One of them I've got a picture of. Oh, here we are. Right. Sorry. I'm destroying the machine. That's one that we lived in. And I think you might have been to see that one. Mm-hmm. The
9 Livingston Drive.
9 Livingston Drive, yes. And that was a very big house, that one.
Okay, do you want to just hold that up and sit back a little bit? Just so that we can see that on the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. You can put it down then. Okay, so before we go any further, Who is Captain Thomas Denison Worrall?
He's looking at you.
Oh, gosh, wow.
That's him, Thomas Denison Worrall. And,
Okay, do you want to just hold that
Okay.
towards the camera, please?
right.
And tell us about Thomas Denison Worrall.
Right, well, I think he was sort of, well, when this photograph was taken, it would have been in about 1860. And he was a master mariner. And he did go on the routes to China under sail before, you know, the steam engines and propeller driven ships, but he was under sail. It was very difficult. You had to be very tough. A lot of people going over to China didn't come back. You know, if they got into a terrible storm or something, quite often a number of the hands that were drowned and all that sort of thing. Very dangerous as well, with these huge beams with the sails on that can move any direction and end up hitting you on the head, and of course you'd be decapitated or whatever.
I'll just take that off you
All
for a
right.
second. So what relation is Captain Thomas Denison
Denison
Worrall
Worrall.
to you?
He is, can I just look this up?
Well, it doesn't
right.
need to be specific.
Well, I think he's 5 times my grandfather. So he's great, 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 great grandfather.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Mm.
To have a photograph of him like that.
I don't know, I think my father got that. He had it. It's a photograph of a photograph.
Yeah.
I think it's a photograph of what's called a daguerre type photograph, which is a glass plate. So that's a photograph of the original daguerre type photograph.
And he had a tragic death.
Yeah, he did. He fell down the hold of a ship. And I think what used to happen, that time in the 1860s, if you were returning from a voyage, you would be held at the bar, which is a particular point at the opening of the River Mersey from the Irish Sea. And you would wait there till the tides changed so that you could enter, because the tides were very, very complicated and very tricky. So, and I think what they used to do, they would have a barrel of rum whilst they were waiting for maybe 20 hours for the tide to be able to get into the port. So they drank rum, and on board would come a pilot, and they would all get basically quite drunk. Anyway, he ended up, as the ship under sail entered the port of Liverpool, the hold was opened and he fell down the hold and died. Difficult times.
Yeah. So, while your father was working with antique clocks, repairing them and selling them, what did your mum do? Did your mum work, or was she a housewife?
No, she was just a housewife. Didn't work. She was quite interested in antiques also. So my father was interested in them, and was professionally involved with them, and my mother also, but she wasn't buying and selling clocks. She didn't buy and sell anything.
What type of a woman was she?
Oh,
When you were young, what type of a...
she was rather small, demure, not sort of outspoken or loud, or she was rather quiet and very very interested in reading and reading books all the time. She would go through numbers of books in a week, and I think she strained her eyesight in the end through all this reading.
Now, at the age of 12, you had a shop, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes,
Could you tell us about that shop? How did you end up with a shop at the age of 12?
Oh, I rented it.
But how did you do that? Like, 12-year-olds don't normally think I'll rent a shop. So tell us the process of how you ended up with a shop.
Perhaps I was abnormal. Well, I had been collecting antiques from an earlier age.
Was that your father's influence?
Yeah, it basically was through his influence. So I had quite a large collection of antiques, furniture, silver, porcelain, paintings. I was, at about 8, getting hold of these antiques from wherever I could find them. And it might be that I did go to auctions, but I couldn't bid. You couldn't make legal contracts at the age of 8 in those days. I don't think you can now either. So I was going to auction rooms with my mother, who did the bidding for me, and also I was buying from private individuals, usually old ladies that had big houses, and somehow or other I would find out, and then I would buy whatever they didn't particularly want to keep anymore. So I formed quite a large collection, and so we're talking about the shop. So the collection goes into the shop. When I rented the shop, I don't know, it might have been £2 a week, I'm not sure, can't remember. But I didn't do the shop myself. What I did, and I'm afraid I was rather naughty and very crafty, that my school friends, very pretty mothers, volunteered, and I picked the best looking ones out and gave them each 1 day a week. So the staff were the mothers of my school friends.
So where did you get the money from to buy antiques at the age of 8?
Oh, my grandmother.
Oh, okay. So
we talked about her earlier.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about your grandmother.
All right. Well, she used to not give me money, she used to loan me money. And I would go to her house at 1 Upper Rice Lane, and she just lived with a companion, an old lady, and I would go and say, "Oh, I want to buy a watch, Nanny," and she'd and she'd sort of try and talk me out of it and things like that. But eventually, I always succeeded. I was a very determined little brat, but she always put the money up, and I'd pay her back. So when I sold whatever it was I was buying, for example, I bought a watch once, and a very, very special watch, and it was a French watch of the 18th century, and it had a button, and if you pressed the button it played tunes on bells, and it was decorated with diamonds and enamel painting. It was a fantastic thing, most amazing, and I think I bought it from some strange, in a strange sort of set of circumstances. Somebody that had a flat in what is now called the Bullring in Liverpool, had this extraordinary watch, and I got to know about it, and I went to see it, and I really thought I would never get out alive, actually, because I went in with some sort of smart suit or something, or short trousers, I'm not quite sure, but I didn't quite sort of fit the bill, because the kids in the bull ring were sort of, they had guns and things like that. But anyway, I did buy this watch in the most unusual circumstances for quite a lot of money. I think my grandmother was getting a bit edgy. I think I may have paid hundreds of pounds for it, which would translate to thousands of pounds now. Anyway, I did get it, and when I sold it, with any antiques that she funded me, I would always give her a present, which was always the same present. A large box of chocolates. She got the money back, but she didn't get any profit. She got a box of chocolates.
So what was the name of the shop and where was it?
Well, it was called, and I did talk to you about this and I've realised, it was called Penny, I said Penny Lane Antiques. It wasn't. It was Penny Bridge Antiques. The reason it was called Penny Bridge Antiques, just around the corner from it was a bridge, a toll bridge, and you had to pay a penny originally to cross the bridge, which would take you out of Wallasey into what is now called Birkenhead. So that was the name of the shop, Penny Bridge Antiques, and it was in a road called Mill Lane. It still exists, and there was a mill, a windmill in that road. That doesn't exist now, it's been gone for hundreds of years, I guess. So that was it, Penny Bridge Antiques in Mill Lane in Wallasey.
Did you have a sign over the door or anything?
I don't think I did. But I had to spend money on the shop to have bookcases, glass fronted bookcases to put the things in, and I had to have electrical work done, and one man did all of that. He was very clever, called Keith Hogg, and I think I might have had to give him £100 or something, which was a lot of money again. But he made it nice. Oh, yeah. Joseph Edward Worrall was a shipping magnate, but his main interest in life was actually painting, and he was a pre-Raphaelite artist, and his works are exhibited in a number of art galleries. One of them is the Walker Art Gallery, and Ruskin was a great art critic of the Victorian period. He was quite a ferocious art critic, actually, but he wrote about a particular exhibit that Joseph Edward Worrall exhibited in the Royal Academy, that it was the best painting in the Academy exhibition, and he praised it very much, but it was only a little tiny painting. It's only about 6 inches high, I think.
And what relation was he to you?
He was the brother of Thomas Denison Worrall. That's where the shipping business comes in. He is the captain, and Joseph is the owner. Okay,
so you went on. What did you do when you left school?
When I left school, I joined a company of auctioneers in Liverpool called Oathwaite and Liverland. They were quite a famous, well-established company, the best auctioneers in Liverpool. They were the number one. but I started in a very lowly position as a porter, sweeping the floors, helping, although I was very small in stature, helping move pieces of very heavy furniture around, and so that's the beginning, and that's the only way you could in those days. You couldn't just go into a company and become a partner the same day. You had to start at the bottom, but I did become a partner. In a year I became the junior partner to Mr. Brian Litherland. Mr. Oathwaite had left, so there was only one proprietor, who was Brian Litherland. I became his partner.
And then, when did you set up your own auction house?
Well, I became a consultant after I left Oathwaite and Litherland. Didn't particularly get on with my senior partner. He was a bit of a difficult character. And I became a consultant to 4 auction rooms. One in Mould, one in Knutsford, one in Nantwich, one in somewhere else, I can't remember. So I got paid quite well. Well, I dictated how much pay that they had to give me, and improved their businesses, all 4 of them, very substantially. So they became larger and bigger and more profitable and got more works of art than they used to. And then I decided, well, I've done it for them, I think I should try and do it for me. So I did establish a small auction room in Liverpool.
Going back to the shop, what happened to the shop?
Well, when I joined the auction room called Oathwaite in Litherland, I closed it down because it wouldn't be fair for me to be running a shop and all that, and at the same time working for an auction. There was a bit of a conflict of interest, so I volunteered and just closed the shop down.
Okay, so we've got this picture where your father is buying and selling antique clocks, yes, and repairing them, and your mum's a housewife and interested in antiques and going to purchase antiques with you,
yeah,
because you were too young. Where does the chair come from, the Chinese chair? When did that come into your mum's life?
All right. It rather came into my father's life, actually, and that is through Thomas Denison Worrall, who was on the China trip. I'm not quite sure what the seamen call it, but he was going under sail to China. So he would have probably had a set of them. They wouldn't have just made one chair, although only one exists now, and that's on exhibition in Liverpool, the World Gallery, or whatever it's called, the Liverpool Museum. But it would have been certainly one of a set, and I think underneath it there is a number, and it might be number 6 or something like that. So Thomas Denison Worrall bought it in China and brings it over here. He lived in Everton, so it went to his house in Everton, which was a pretty swanky big villa. Everton is now full of little tiny, not particularly interesting houses, but in the 1860s it was a rather smart area and had big old houses. So it ends up in Everton, and then it ends up in my father's possession. So it went down the family line.
Was there any other articles, furniture or textiles or anything from those days in your family home, or was it just the one chair?
Well, it was just the one chair, but there were some other Chinese things, because what these people did, these sailors, etc., when they're going over to China, they would bring back private cargoes. If you were a captain of a ship, you were given an amount of space free of charge, and that space would be used to purchase inside China, predominantly Guangdong, Canton, and there was a huge business going on where the Chinese were making everything, as they do now. If you go into a shop now, nearly everything's made in China. Well, that's been going on for hundreds of years. And so the captains particularly, and the officers, would buy commodities. They might buy 180 silver-topped walking Malacca canes, or they might be buying silverware, or they might be buying ivory fans. They were buying all sorts of things and bringing them into England. Post 1832, everything came to Liverpool.
And were these things made for Chinese people, or were they?
Oh, no. These were made by Chinese to order for Westerners, and they were all in the Western tradition. There might be, fans might have carvings which would be identified as Chinese, but the objects themselves were for Western people to use. So furniture, everything under the sun, porcelain made for the Western called export wares. That's what they were called, export wares. And a lot of money was made by these captains and officers buying large amounts of goods and then auctioning them at the port of Liverpool on the dock side. They would auction them off, and then they would find their way into all these bazaars. And there were, I think, at one point in Bowl Street, 25 bazaars, and they were selling ladies' silk clothes, shawls, everything, to fans, to walking canes and sofas, all made and looking like they're Western, but they're not, they're actually Chinese.
Consequently, are they very valuable now?
Yes, they are. They're quite collected now. They're not in the realms of imperial Chinese art, such as an imperial Chinese vase made for the Qianlong Emperor. The last one brought £285 million. We're not talking about that sort of expense. Thousands of pounds for single items, that's sort of a round figure.
So where was the chair in your house?
Well, it was in a number of it was in all of our houses, so it moved around. I think it mainly was stayed in the hall.
So it was like an object?
Yes.
Not like a chair?
People didn't sit on it.
Yeah.
It wasn't in use. It was a decorative piece of architecture, really.
And what did it look like?
Well, it had a very tall back, and it had what are called cabrio legs, which are rather like dog's feet, really. They're sort of they're like a wonky dog's foot, that the feet are on the chair, and it had an embroidered textile drop-in seat, and I think it might have had the original textiles still on it, and I think it still does in the museum have the original textiles on the seat.
So because of this chair, your mother became interested in China trade?
Yeah. Yes, because we all knew the chair came from China, and it was made of a very special wood, and I think it's called either Zitan or Huanghua Li. I don't quite remember. I'd have to get up to the chair and have a closer look at it. But the wood was exclusively Chinese. No such woods grew in Europe, and it was extremely heavy. So if I threw the chair at you, it probably would kill you.
I'd throw it back. So Eldon, this is really interesting. So you're now in Seal Street.
Yes, that's where I opened. Well, the first premises I had were in the Blue Coat Chambers off Church Street, and I had some attic offices on the top floor with oval windows, rather nice looking, and I wasn't really being dishonest, but for some reason the Mrs. Zuckerman, who ran the Blue Coat Chambers or something like that, she was under the impression I was an artist. And I had long hair down to my shoulders, and I might have looked arty or something, but she didn't quite grasp that I was an auctioneer. And so I was given the artist's rate of rent, which was a very small amount of money. And I was able to use the concert hall for holding the auctions. But the offices were in the attics of the Blue Coat Chambers. But so that's where I started my little business off.
What year did you live in number 9 Livingston Drive?
I can tell you now. 1982.
That's what it looks like now.
Oh, that's what it looks like now, right.
Not bad.
No. Yes. So yeah, we moved in 1982.
So were you in Seal Street in 1982? When did you go to Seal Street?
Oh, well, before 1982, from the Blue Coat Chambers, I found a sort of warehouse, I think it might be described as, in Seal Street, which had a courtyard, and it was on 3 floors or 4 floors, and that was where really I started to advance in the world of auctions in Liverpool. So I didn't own the building. I rented the whole building, which was quite a large building, and had household sales once a week on 1 floor, and then once a month fine art, valuable antiques on another floor. So I sort of diverted the goods that were coming in. So household things got put in a junk sale, and the valuable things got put in a valuable sale. So they went in tandem, these auctions. And then I bought the building. I thought, paying all this money to these architects that owned it. So I sort of challenged them. I said, I'm going to leave here. And they said, oh no, you mustn't do. I said, well, you better sell me the building, because if you don't, I am leaving. And so they had it valued, and I was, I don't know how I got the money, but I bought it anyway.
So the Dr Worrall collection started with this one chair.
Mm-hmm.
And then how did your mum build up her collection?
Well, she used me. So I was sort of under commission that anything of China trade interest, items made in China for Western people, anything that came through my hands from houses of deceased persons that lived in Liverpool, anything from Liverpool made by the Chinese for the local Liverpudlians is what my mother said, you get it, get any of those things for me, anything, furniture, fans, textiles, paintings, ceramics, anything at all, but it's got to be connected with Liverpool. So that's what I was commissioned to do. And I suppose I made some money out of it, in that if I bought on behalf of Dorothy a Chinese a sofa, couch or something, there was a commission attached to the purchase. So that was what was in it for me.
So when you lived in 9 Livingston Drive North, was that house full of China Trade items?
Yes, it was packed. And it was a very big house.
Do you want to have a look at that and talk us through? Take us for a tour around the house.
Right.
Describe what was in the rooms.
Oh, I see. Well, you went up a lot of steps, and there was a huge wrought iron and glass canopy, so that when the house was originally built, of course, they didn't have cars, so you would have arrived at its drive in a carriage. But to save you getting wet...
I'll just put it there to remind you, but...
Yes, and so to save you getting wet, it had this enormous, very, very elaborate canopy, so you didn't get rained on. And you got the marble steps, which there were about 6. Then you came into a very large hallway, which had some large pieces of furniture in. I think one was an ebony cabinet, which was about 6 foot high, and there's a very decorative piece of furniture made of ebony, very heavy wood. So that was there. Oh, and then there were some paintings of some of the ports of China, oil paintings in Chinese carved wood frames, and I think one was of Shanghai factory, or Bund as they were called, which were the trading stations for Europeans. They were limited. You couldn't open up trade in Beijing, a Westerner. You were limited to either Guangdong or Shanghai, those 2 ports. So I had large paintings of what are called the factories, European trading establishments. Very interesting looking paintings, and now one of them is now in the Maritime Museum that we owned. Quite a large factory painting, and I think that they're very expensive, these paintings of these factories. They go into hundreds of thousands of pounds now. But anyway, one of them survived.
And did the chair go with you?
With me where?
To 9 Livingston Drive North?
Yeah, oh it did. Oh yes, yeah, it was there. And then it ended up in Sunnyside, which were very large early Victorian houses in Prince's Park. So it had about 25 years there. So it did move around. Wherever I went, it went.
And you had a Chinese bed and a chaise lounge, was it?
No, it wasn't a bed. It was what would be called a sofa. Now that was on permanent exhibition in the Museum of Liverpool at the waterfront, but it's closed the gallery, which was all part of the collection of Dorothy's. This sofa was an enormous thing, and it most elaborate. I suppose you call it Rococo. So the Chinese were making Rococo furniture for the Westerners, but it's so odd because Rococo is European origin designs, but they managed to very well imitate. But this Rococo large sofa was very large. I think you could probably fit about 8 or 10 people on it. And I did used to sleep on it as an adult. So if I'd been out drinking, for example, I would throw myself on this enormous sofa and wake up in the morning as sober as a judge.
I remember you showed us an outfit that was in the museum. Is it a Chinese gown or something? And you said you wore it to a fancy dress party.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes.
I think that's in the museum now.
Yes, it is. It belonged to the. It belonged to Chen Lung, the Emperor of China, who gave it to the then 9th Dalai Lama. Well, the museum acquired the collection from my mother, and none of it belonged to my brother or me. It all was hers. So they entered into an arrangement called the it's called a douceur arrangement. Douceur is a Latin legal term, which means that the value of the objects at the death of the person that is gifting them is deductible from the estate in the form of no tax paid. So it's a very complicated matter, but it's very beneficial to people that or the recipients of the estate of the deceased party. They can claim removal of taxation.
And how much at that time was it worth, the collection?
Oh, now that I can't off the top of my head tell you. I can look it up, but I mean it ran into then. When I say then, I'm not sure how long ago it was. Sent over. We ran into hundreds of thousands of pounds, which of course would now be many millions of pounds, because these things have gone much higher value over a period of time. So
how did you feel about that?
Feel about what?
About the museum having your mother's China Trade collection? Like emotionally, how did you feel? Because you must have become familiar with it.
Well, yeah, I was quite happy. Yes, I was quite happy. I was quite proud, as a matter of fact. So I did used to go and look at the items in the museum, And in fact, I designed the gallery that now contains in the World Museum a fragment of my mother's collection, but I designed it, so they put my name on the wall. Dr Worrall, this acknowledged me and has and so I selected the items and sort of I didn't have anything to do with making displaying them, but I did select them and gave the descriptions and the dates of the artifacts, and so there's quite a bit of furniture I did. I wanted the furniture to come out, not all of it, but I just thought it's interesting for the public to look at large pieces of furniture, and to be told that they're Chinese when they don't look Chinese at all.
When did your mum die? Was it long after she'd given her collection?
Not too long, no. No, I think she was deteriorating when the collection went to the museum. So she might have lived a couple of years after that.
Okay, and did... Oh, your phone.